The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another episode of The Stack, where we talk about people, business, and technology. Today, we're going to dive into the Huntress 2024 threat report. And as we know, hackers aren't only concerned about infiltrating the enterprise and mid-market. However, they are focused on targeting those businesses that fall below that line. They're caught in the crosshairs as well. It's these businesses that serve as that test bed for attackers to try out new tactics and techniques. And this is also an opportunity for them to establish that foothold. Now, understanding the threat landscape as an organization, MSPs, charged with protecting SMBs is critical. So we'll share what Huntress has observed in 2023 and what this means for MSPs and their cyber strategies. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring in a guest here. I've got our guest here from Huntress. I have Jamie Levy, and let's go ahead and bring Jamie in. There's Jamie. How you doing today, Jamie?
Good. Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. I'm very glad to be here. So I'm actually the director of Adversary Tactics here at Huntress. And so what I do is I lead a team of elite researchers. We do, people like John Hammond, who's very well known out there in the world. We do a lot of the research that kind of leads our tech. So the things that lead to new detectors, also some of the education opportunities, like anytime that you've seen where we have blogs and information about threats, like Move It, right? Or any of those other types of vulnerabilities that happen. We handle a lot of that investigation, breaking it down for people to digest, and then also figuring out like what are the mitigations and building that into our tech stack. Just a little bit about myself and kind of my background. I've worked in the cybersecurity field, usually in forensics, incident response, specifically memory forensics, for over 15 years. I'm also involved in basically as a developer for Volatility, which is an open source framework for being able to do forensic analysis on the RAM of machines. And so I do a lot of malware, reverse engineering type stuff and research in that capacity.
So it's never a dull moment, is it?
No, never.
You know, it's crazy. It's officially summer, and typically summertime we I don't want to say that we slack off or take time completely off. Business still operates, life still happens, and most especially bad actors aren't taking time off, do they?
No, they never take time off. They're
No.
always looking for an opportunity. I mean, they're running their criminal enterprises just like businesses, and they can't really afford to miss a beat either. So,
Right. And they look for those opportunities as well, right? As far as,
mhm.
where we do take time off around holidays, and they look to capitalize on that, right?
Yeah, totally. One of the kind of running jokes in the IR field is like anytime that you're about to hit a holiday or even like the weekend, like the attackers are just waiting for you to just try to go home in order
Yeah.
to do the next exploit.
Catch you off guard. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So let's jump in. I was reading from your report. You guys have your Huntress 2024 threat report. And just for our audience, we'll throw into the comments a link for you to be able to download the report, full of incredible information for you to sift through. But one of the things that really caught my attention is that hackers are weaponizing the tools that we use as MSPs every single day. And the number was 36% of tools used for remote access are RMM tools, right?
Correct. Yes. So attackers will often take advantage of anything that's available to them. And RMMs are no exception. They're easy to download. You can start a trial often without any type of scrutiny or having to put a credit card in place or anything like this. So attackers are very easily able to take advantage of that. And they
Okay.
do. And it makes sense not only from like ease of use, but also from blendability, right? Because like you said, MSPs use RMMs, and sometimes we've even seen in our customer base, like sometimes there might be like five MMMs or five RMMs that are being used
Sure.
within a particular customer's infrastructure, because every admin has their own preference of which ones they want to use. And so attackers are using that to their advantage in order to blend in. It's a legitimate tool. Nobody's going to suspect anything. It's going to blend in with all the other kind of noise that's going on, and so they're able to just fly under the radar. And without having to actually build any tools on their own, they can just use these off-the-shelf tools.
Definitely a one to many type of scenario then, right? Because, as
Hmm.
as a MSP, you have the RMM tool in place to be able to manage all of your clients, under a single pane of glass, to use the cliche. And there's advantages to that, but then there's also that disadvantage of the one to many.
Correct. Correct.
So, are there any other trends when it comes to RMM abuse that you guys have found?
Um, yeah, so I mean, definitely there's the abuse of the RMMs. Sometimes they're using RMMs that are already in place. They found credentials or whatnot, and they're just able to use that as it's there. Sometimes they're, like I said, they're using these trialed versions or other compromised versions. Like we've seen where they've compromised one customer, but they're using that to reach out to other customers that aren't of the same infrastructure. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, anything that they can use to their advantage, they will take advantage of that. And I think we even had a blog post where it was healthcare customers where we figured out that one particular healthcare provider's RMN was compromised, and then they were using it to reach out to pharmacies, and
Oh,
it was
wow.
trusted basically. And so, yeah,
Right.
just reusing that infrastructure that's already in place and trusted, and nobody would ever suspect anything.
Gotcha. So, I mean, beyond that, we know that cloud storage services are an attack vector as well. Um, the trend continues, at rapid speed, rapid growth, for more and more businesses moving towards the cloud. I mean,
Hmm.
we know that, but it's there's continuation and growth of moving from on-prem to cloud in different areas. But what should an MSP know about securing the cloud?
Yeah, definitely take advantage of any type of ways to lock down your cloud instances. So MFA, make sure all the logging's in place, make sure the logging's going to some place that you can actually take advantage of it and look to see whether or not there's something nefarious within your infrastructure. So those are kind of like the best things that you can do. Make sure that you have everything locked down, and that way, if something is compromised, like if somebody's password is overtaken, then at least if you have MFA in place, then most likely they're not going to still be able to log in and take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that we kind of noticed also was that attackers were using these kind of freely available cloud services like like Google Drive, Dropbox, et cetera, just to stage files. And so from that perspective, the best thing that you can do is trying to make sure that your employees aren't just trusting everything that's coming in just because it looks legitimate that it's coming from Dropbox or whatever doesn't mean that you should click on it. You should probably question it, especially if it's not coming from somebody that you're expecting to get a file from. And even then, if let's say Susan from HR sends you something with Dropbox, it might be good to verify with Susan, hey, did you mean to send this to me, before you just randomly click on it and download
Right.
it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I think the names that, those branded names that you mentioned, because of their brand, we tend to feel as if they're more secure, safe, and, that is legit, but that is definitely not always the case, right?
Correct, correct. And it may even be something as simple as, we don't use Dropbox. We only use another technology. And if we're getting
Right.
Dropbox links from something, then maybe we shouldn't click on that, right? So just being vigilant, making sure that your employees kind of know about these threats that are going about, and making sure people aren't clicking on random things. And then just hoping that you have, in case they do click on something, hoping you have your machines locked down enough where just random things aren't going to be able to take advantage of the situation.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned MFA. We would think that it's a no-brainer that everybody's going to have MFA enabled, but that's not the case. And what are you seeing from that perspective? Do you have any stats in regards to MFA and the lack of use?
Um, I don't have any stats offhand, but we've definitely seen cases with the M365 offering that we have. We've seen cases where MFA would have helped. It wasn't enabled for whatever reason, and a potential business email compromise may have
Okay.
happened. And so there's definitely those kinds of cases. And there are cases whenever you can see that somebody's trying to exhaust the MFA. They keep sending the code over and over and over again, hoping that at some point somebody on the other end is going to get tired of this and just approve it, or by
Right.
accident approve it and let them in. So you can see things like that within
Okay.
logs as well. So
Okay. Yeah, it's
definitely things to
definitely.
be vigilant of.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I mean, you would think that it's in today's world, 2024, that this would be in place across the board.
Mhm.
I do hear from some MSPs that they do struggle with, some of their clients getting, wanting to not have it, not have
Mhm.
MFA in place. And, it's just that continued education and helping them to understand that, the easier we make things for ourselves, the easier we're making things for bad actors. And,
Mhm.
we unfortunately are in a world where we have to put these parameters in place, in order to protect ourselves. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. But I mean, MSPs honestly shouldn't feel too awfully bad if they're not able to deploy these types of practices, though. I mean, because even larger companies, like I think that if you take a look at like the Snowflake compromise, I think that just happened, like that was
Yeah.
ultimately like an MFA thing too that wasn't enabled. And so like if large companies don't always do the best practices,
Yeah.
there's something to be said there.
Right. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about credential dumping. That was something else that I saw in the
Mhm.
report. Before we jump into it, what can you explain to our audience, what is credential dumping?
Yeah, so credential dumping is something that threat actors will often employ in order to gain information about other accounts that are on the system or in the infrastructure of whatever uh, customer, or basically whatever company they're trying to get into. So what they'll do is they'll get access to a machine, and then they will use a tool. It could be something that's already on the machine, because there are certain DLLs and things that can be utilized in order to dump out passwords from like the LSAS process or registry, et cetera. Or they could use something off the shelf like Mimikatz, which probably a lot of people have heard of, in order to accomplish this and dump out passwords and user information from the machine in order. The hope is that you would get something interesting like an admin username and password, or domain admin would be the best, right? And then you can basically spread laterally across the network and continue hitting other machines until you find other things of interest. And so, yeah, definitely something that attackers will do kind of in their early stages of gaining access in order to further basically do reconnaissance and exfil data, et cetera.
What's the defense against this?
So there's a few things that you can do. So for instance, disabling use login credential in wdigest. That's something that Microsoft recommends doing in order to kind of help mitigate this. Enabling PPL for LSAS is another thing that Microsoft recommends, as well as deploying Windows Defender Credential Guard, which would also help against this. And then other best practices might be something like reducing admin role on RDP. And then, of course, MFA, like as another mitigation of like, okay, let's say they get the credentials. If, hopefully you're not using the same passwords everywhere else, but so try not to use the same passwords. But if you are, having MFA on all the other things that you can lock down might keep them out of like, your N365 or like other resources, et cetera. So, so yeah, there's lots of different things you can do, but mostly trying to harden the machine as much as you can, and then having some kind of preventative or potentially preventative measures just in case.
Are there any trends as far as MFA on the workstation login aspect that you're seeing?
Other than what I've said, I mean, like we've seen like where attackers are trying to exhaust, MFA, like they're just, trying to get the code, keep asking for the code, et cetera, until somebody gives up. So there's a lot of that. I think that's like their biggest, use of attack, like if it is deployed correctly.
Okay, gotcha. Let's talk a little bit about the ripple effects of Quackbot, the Quackbot takedown in August of last year.
Cool. Yeah, this was interesting. So just when we first started looking at the data, I was kind of curious to see like if we saw any changes in any threat actors kind of around the time that Kbot was taken down. So Kbot was taken down at the kind of the end of August of last year. And so for those who don't really know what Kbot is, it's an initial access malware that threat actors will utilize in order to gain access to a system. And at some point, they may usually deploy ransomware as like a final step. And so we were kind of curious to see were there other initial access malware that might have had an uptick as the time as Kbot was kind of trending down after the infrastructure was taken down from the government. And then also we wanted to see were there any changes in any of the ransomware families that we were currently monitoring within our customer base. And so what we did notice was that yes, the Kbot takedown did have an effect on these things. And in hindsight, it totally makes sense. So for instance, I live on a farm. And so on the farm, there's definitely predators that are around the perimeter of the farm, and they're
Yeah.
looking for access to various things. And we have livestock guardian dogs that keep the predators around, outside of the perimeter of certain areas of the farm. And one thing that you may or may not know is that predators also have their own basically their own boundaries, and they protect those boundaries from other predators. And so if you have a coyote that's going around the perimeter of your farm, it's keeping other coyotes and things away, and bobcats away. And so the best kind of measure is to make sure that that particular coyote knows it can't get past a certain point, and it will basically keep these other predators at bay. And so you see the same kind of thing within the threat actor landscape of you have this one particular threat actor that's deploying Kbot or whatever, and as they are removed, there's this void, and so you start to have these other predators starting to come in and try to fill that void. These are
Yeah.
all businesses, and they're going to take advantage of the situation. If there is a void, they're going to fill it. And so what we saw was the inverse of graph of Emotet starting to come in and starting to expand, and some of the other like ransomwares, like there started to become a little more of diversification of ransomware families that were being deployed because they had this opportunity as well as since these things were being displaced. And so yeah, definitely very interesting, and
Yeah.
it opens up a conversation of how effective are these takedowns. Is there maybe something else that we can do that might be a little more effective to disenfranchise threat actors and kind of keep them at bay along the perimeter?
Yeah. I love analogies. So I love, the Kbot analogy to the farm. That's great. And I think, that's as we try to, obviously we don't want to get too deep into the woods as we're working with our clients. But, when we're educating them, having those type of analogies that are broken down into that type of format are great. So it's a better, frame as far as trying to help them understand. So um, that's pretty cool. Now, what kind of guidance would you give an MSP today looking at, the threat landscape that we're up against?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, you can't protect what you can't see. So definitely you need to understand what you have in your infrastructure. Do some asset management. Figure out like what machines should you have out there. Making sure that you have all the correct security tools that you're utilizing. Things like EDRs, right? Which pretty much everybody has to have for compliance reasons nowadays. Making sure that those are installed on all your machines. One of the biggest mistakes that I think we see with customers nowadays is that they'll deploy EDR technology to just their servers, and then they leave all the other endpoints basically just out in the open and for
Mhm.
free pickings. And so
Yeah.
when that happens and one of these unprotected endpoints gets popped, then you don't have that visibility into that machine. You're basically behind the curve at that point. So making sure that everything is installed, making sure that you're up to date on patches, and just so basically just like the very basics of safety first, and then trying to keep abreast of like what are the trends. Start to get involved in like reading all the different threat reports. I mean, we've come out with this threat report because there wasn't some. We have basically visibility into these smaller businesses that nobody has really cared about. They've been
Right.
neglected up to this point. And so we wanted to make sure that we're bringing this information about our customers out there so that people can get some insights. Because a lot of times, what you may or may not realize is that attackers are trying out new methods all the time, and they're going to try them out in kind of the sandbox of like smaller companies first because there's a lower bar of entry, and so it's very prevalent, and it's important to kind of understand these threats and why, and to try to raise that bar and make it harder for threat actors to take advantage of that situation.
Yeah. It was interesting last week on one of our calls. We had someone indicate that they had a client that only wanted to protect the C-suite, and they didn't
Hmm.
want to, they didn't want a complete solution. I'm pretty sure she had indicated that, they moved on from that opportunity because they were adamant about that.
Mm,
That just it's mind blowing. I mean, we've seen and heard of scenarios where restaurant chains, where they're looking to focus on back of house, management computers, and they feel that they're protected by their POS provider and don't need security focused on that. And again, another mind-blowing type of scenario,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, you'd be amazed what a threat actor will do if they just manage to get a foothold into one
Yeah,
computer. They can, I mean, they will be determined and they will figure out a way to get to whatever they want. And you just can't think that you're not going to be a target. That's what a lot of people make the mistake of, is like, oh, I'm too small, I'm not interesting, why would they
yeah,
target me? There's reasons why they target you, even if it's not that they're interested in exactly what you have. They're interested in pivoting from you to something even bigger.
right.
And so they, a lot of times these threat actors, like, they know why they're targeting you. It may be because you're an interesting government contractor, or it may be that you do business with an interesting government contractor, or
Yeah.
whatever. It's, you don't know why they're targeting you, but they will.
Yeah, and it's wild when you hear someone like you mentioned say, "Well, we're too small. Nobody has interest in what we have to offer." And it's like, do you ever go to your banking sites? Well, of course I do.
Mhm.
Do you have specific vendors that you log into and you make purchases and you pay your bill with them? Well, of course. And then you
Mhm.
just keep going on, and it helps them to understand that you have a lot more than you think that they want, and
Correct.
that access is dangerous. So I want to just, as we're wrapping up, for our audience that might not currently use Huntress, you guys had an NFR program, and I believe it's called the Neighborhood Watch program.
Correct.
Can you elaborate a little bit more and share some information about the Huntress Neighborhood Watch?
Yeah, so we do have this program called Neighborhood Watch, and I think just about anybody can sign up for it. Usually it's partners, and what it allows you to do is it gives you a certain amount of licenses that you can use for your own internal usage, and like your other, like, friends, etc. Just to give people protection, right? And so that includes our EDR technology, which we have a SOC who overlooks that, etc. So definitely something that you should take advantage of, and freely available. So
Excellent. And, of course, anybody wanting to learn more about Huntress can go to huntress.com. You can also check out Huntress directly at everythinmsp.com. If you search for Huntress, there's links to be able to reach out to them and gain additional information. Jamie, I greatly appreciate our time today. It was great speaking with you. Any parting words for our audience as we sign off?
yeah, well, thanks again for having me. I want to put that out there. Hopefully, people appreciated some of the things that we discussed here, and I'm freely available to talk to as well. Pretty easy to find on the internet, on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., email. So yeah, just I like to chat with people, and feel free to send me a note.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Jamie, again, thank you so much for your time. For all of our audience out there, thank you for your time as well. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.